Yo, I'm a little French kid who copied Iman Ghadzi's challenge funnel, pasted it into Marshall's business, and cash collected 161K in 7 days. And we quite literally 4x his business from 76K a month last October to 300K that month. Now, let's be honest here, this is probably like the 27th case study video you've watched just this month. And so you've probably applied, tried copy pasting other people's funnels into your business or into your client's business if you're a growth upward copywriter, but it hasn't worked out the way you thought it would. And I'm here to tell you that there's one simple reason for that. You see, all these funnels, these tactics, these strategies that you see online, all these things don't actually dictate how much money you're going to generate from a launch. Your messaging does. Okay? Because listen, anyone can fucking mix and match some bullshit together and call it $1 million funnel. That's not what makes money. What makes money is the words, the psychological first principles of persuasion that actually get a human being to take the action you want them to. So, in this video, I'm going to be breaking down pretty much the 7 pillars of persuasion that create compelling marketing campaigns from a copywriter's perspective. Then I'm showing you exactly how we applied each pillar into Marshall's campaign, breaking down the copy of all the sales assets line by line, so you can finally understand what it takes to actually create a compelling marketing message, so you can finally predictably crush every single one of your launches instead of literally printing one month and then flopping the next with no idea what actually made the difference. Quick warning, what you're about to learn is genuinely powerful, so please use this to actually do good in the world and help people and sell things that actually changes lives, not to manipulate or scam people with a shitty product. Without further ado, boys, let's get into it.
Alrighty, so first off, before we get into the actual pillars, I want to show you a sort of a breakdown of the funnel, even though, funnels obviously don't matter, but it's just for context, right? So funnel infrastructure, so traffic sources we used are Instagram through story sequences and YouTube. From there, we had a waitlist VSL in the description, and we would promote from the Instagram to the waitlist, as well as from the YouTube to the waitlist. And then from there, it was basically waitlist. They would register, and then they would see a post waitlist VSL. From there, they would receive also a 14-day email sequence, email campaign, and then this was basically leading up to the actual event, so the actual presentation, so the challenge funnel, the 3-day challenge funnel. Where we essentially had 3 days of presentations. So day 1, day 2, day 3, where on day 1 we presented them with value. Day 2 we presented them with even more value based on a different specific theme. But we would have a pitch at the end. And then on day 3 we would have a presentation with sort of like a softer sort of pitch. Specific to B2B owners, because basically we targeted aspiring clothing brand owners and current clothing brand owners trying to scale. And so day 3 was pretty much more so for those B2B guys that are and sort of have a clothing brand that are just trying to scale pretty much. So looking at scaling systems and stuff like that. So yeah, that was sort of the pitch there. And then this was sort of a pitch that was more tailored to guys that were aspiring to start their clothing brands. And then yeah, from there we had also email sequences between each day. So obviously we had the 14-day email sequence leading up to day 1. Between day 1 and day 2, we had the hype sequence, a day 2 email hype sequence of a couple emails, just to remind them of the email and get them hype, remind them of the presentation day and get them hype. And then same thing for day 3. Between day 2 and day 3, we had a hype email sequence as well for that, just to increase the show rate and to increase the intent. And yeah, pretty much that was it. That's the funnel infrastructure, just to show you. This is not, I'm not fucking, bullshitting. Here's the results from the actual webinar from October 1st to October 7th. We cash collected 163K in 7 days. So yeah, you can have a look at this. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Without further ado, let's get into it, boys. Alrighty, so pillar number 1, the customer bubble. The better you understand your customer, the more money you will make. The better you understand your customer, the easier your copy will be to write. And every great piece of copy is written with the customer in mind the entire time. Okay, so as a result, your copy must start in the customer bubble. Now, what the fuck is the customer bubble? Let me show you a diagram to explain this better. So, you have reality here. Think of it like this. You have reality here. Boom, this is everything that is true, accurate, and is just real. Okay, then you have people. Okay, this is your prospect, and this prospect has gone through experience, theories, has been taught different theories, different judgments, and has made different beliefs, and has different beliefs, and has made different judgments, sort of as a result of all this stuff that he's been through in throughout his life, and that has shaped the way that he views reality. And so he views reality or perceives reality in a bubble, right? A bubble that is not the real reality. It is a fake reality, and it is what everyone has, okay? And so as a result, he has different beliefs, different desires, different fears, pains, and failures, emotions, suspicions as other people, right? And so when you're targeting your sort of like when you're writing copy, what you have to do is you have to target these specific desires, fears, beliefs, emotions, pains slash failures, and suspicions that this person has specifically, because when you can do this and when you can match the customer bubble and meet them where they're at, you create resonance. And essentially what that means is you just end up resonating with that individual, and as a result what that does is it creates an insane amount of trust that you understand what it is they're going through, and as a result they trust, therefore inherently that you have the right solution for them, right? And so that's why it is so important to understand what are their beliefs, desires, fears, emotions, pains, failures, and suspicions. Okay? Because people will do anything for someone who encourages their dreams, confirms their suspicions, allays their fears, and this is so important, justifies their failures, and throws rocks at enemies. Okay? So, you don't have to do all of these things, but the more you do these things, and the more aspect of these things you have within your copy, the better it will be at convincing someone or persuading someone that you have the best solution out there, pretty much, and you can therefore understand and resonate with them to a deeper level than anyone else in your industry, in your competition, right? So understanding your customer, that's why it's so important to do market research, right? And if you stay till the end of this video, actually, I'll show you how you can get access to this 7-pillar checklist, so you can create copy and create a compelling marketing message that resonates within your audience, so you can do so as well. Now, here's how to apply this. Okay, so here's a specific example of Marshall's story sequence here, which was used to essentially promote the Q4 Blueprint event. So let's get into it. So I'm going to analyze this from a point of view of the customer bubble. So starting with building a clothing brand is the loneliest thing you'll ever do. So where does this meet them at? Well, what does this do? This essentially confirms their suspicions, right? Because they probably thought this before, that it's going to be pretty lonely to start a business in general. It allays their fears because it's like Marshall's been through that as a result. Just saying that, starting a clothing brand is lonely is like allaying their fears because it makes them feel heard in that sense. Um, and encourages their dreams because it meets them where they're at with the idea of starting a clothing brand in general, right? Everyone wants to talk about the salads and the lifestyle, but nobody talks about the late nights wondering if you're delusional for thinking this could actually work, right? So you're relating to that pain, the you're you're relating to the suspicions that they have about this. You're allaying their fears because you're relating to them, right? You're showing that you understand what they're going through just by doing that. You don't have to specifically allay their fears in a direct way. You can do it in an indirect way, just like we've done so in this example, where it's like just communicating the potential things that they might go through and showing that you've gone through these things is a way to allay their fears because they can feel that you've gone through this, and therefore because you've come out the other side as a better sort of like successful person, then you're essentially allaying their fears and showing that they can do it themselves as well. Yeah. From there, um, but nobody talks about the late nights, the moment where your drop flops and you question everything, when you're comparing yourself to brands that seem to have it all figured out while you're struggling to just get noticed. I've been there. Got kicked out at 18, slept on couches, worked random jobs. Every time I posted about my brand, I wondered if people thought I was just some delusional kid, right? So all of these elements here are allaying their fears. Because it's like, if Marshall's done it at this sort of like rock bottom state, it's like, why can't I? It increases the perceived likelihood of achievement by allaying the fears that they may have, right? It confirms the suspicions. It encourages their dream that they can do it themselves too. If Marshall can do it when he got kicked out of his own house at 18 years old, they're probably not in such a bad situation, right? In that sort of state, and as a result, it encourages that if Marshall can do it, then why can't I? You know. So that's what we're doing here. Now, but here's what I learned, right? Those moments of doubt are just signs you're pushing outside your comfort zone. Again, we're allaying their fears here, but in a direct way this time, because we're saying those moments of doubt, which is stuff that they've probably thought about, right? These moments of doubt that they're definitely experiencing for if they've tried, sort of building a clothing brand, or if they're thinking of doing so, are just signs you're pushing outside your comfort zone. So we're saying that they're just signs of pushing outside your comfort zone, and that's exactly where growth happens. And so we're reframing this idea that these moments of doubt that they experience are not actually bad, they're actually good, because they're signs that you're growing, right? And so what that does is it's just a direct way of allaying their fears, right? The thing that they are afraid of and don't like, which is these moments of doubt, is actually good for them, right? Every brand that's crushing it now went through the same exact doubts, again, relating to them, that you're having right now. The only difference is that they had a clear path forward when doubt hit. That's why October 1st to 3rd, I'm revealing the exact path, using the same exact wording here, path and path, that took me from broke to seven figures, so you can skip years of guessing. And so what we're doing here is we're encouraging their dreams, because all they need is the right path, and we're giving that to them, right? Cool. This is the Q4 Blueprint Challenge, 3 days of deep training to execute a successful drop before the biggest shopping season of the year. Claim your spot now. So again, I'm going to analyze this as we go through the different pillars, but this is just looking at the customer bubble. Now, we also have the actual waitlist landing page that these people would essentially go to from that story sequence, which would bring them right here, where it would say, quite literally, steal the Q4 blueprint that took me from kicked out at 18 to a seven-figure brand. Again, what we're doing is we're creating the gap between the current state and the dream state, and we're relating to them by allaying their fears, encouraging their dreams, because we're saying that if he can do it, then he can too, then you can too. Confirming their suspicions, we're allaying their fears, we're justifying the failures. Everything they've gone through is actually because, they didn't have a clear path forward, and we're giving that to them, right? We're giving that the Q4 blueprint, right? Steal the Q4 blueprint to go from X to Y, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to the customer bubble. Let's move on to pillar number 2. Alrighty, pillar number 2, the new opportunity. So the most compelling offer you can give someone is a new opportunity. The most persuasive leaders in history gave their followers a new opportunity. It is not an improvement, it's something totally new. And so basically, a new opportunity is when you show a prospect a completely different path to their goal that they haven't even considered before. Okay, here's why having a new opportunity is indispensable to create a compelling marketing message. So number one, it's because it creates hope. Okay, by showing people a new path, you give them permission to believe again, to believe that they can actually achieve the dream outcome that they were destined to achieve. Maybe, and so it's like makes them think that maybe it wasn't me that was the problem, maybe it was the approach that I was taught, right? This creates hope that they can finally achieve their dream outcome, right? Number 2, it bypasses skepticism. So now they can't compare you to past programs or other programs out there, because you're framing the problem differently. And so you're not another course, you're a different category, you're one of one, which leads me to my next point, which is number 3. It eliminates price resistance. Because think about it, when there's no other comparison to any other program out there, there's no price shopping. Okay, they're not asking, is this cheaper than program X or Y or Z? They're asking instead, how do I access this new path? And so a new opportunity doesn't just make your offer better, it makes your offer incomparable. And when you're incomparable, price becomes irrelevant. And that's why the opportunity is the new opportunity, and having a new opportunity for your marketing message or your launch or whatever it is you're doing is so crucial. Okay, now how to create/find your new opportunity. So this is going to be based on understanding the sophistication level of your market, which says pretty much that the market increases in skepticism through time, amount, and quality of buying experiences, right? And so you have level 1 here where essentially it's sort of like an untapped market and you can just make any claim and it'll sound compelling. Number 2, you have to make a bigger claim than your competitors. So for example, level 1 would be sign 5 clients in 90 days. Level 2 would be sign 10 clients in 45 days, right? We're making a bigger claim, but it's sort of like the same idea, big idea, right? Level 3 would be introducing a big differentiator that supports the claim and convinces the mind. So using like a specific unique mechanism. So like, sign 10 clients in 45 days using my high value outreach method. Level 4, for example, would be, or level 4 basically says that you need to create a newer or better differentiator, so unique mechanism, or improve on the previous one. So for example, sign 10 clients in 45 days using my AI automated high value outreach system, right? And so the reason that this is better is because the word AI automated makes it sound, or, in the VSL, you would specify that, it's sort of like it's automated. So it's done for you. So they don't have to do outreach anymore. So that's why it's better, right? And then level 5 is when the differentiators burn out. So this is where there's so many new unique mechanisms. The market is so like saturated and so sophisticated. Everyone's talking about different mechanisms and shit that differentiators in general just burn out. And so the audience skepticism here is an all-time high. So here's where you have to focus on full-on empathic marketing, and that's now your only option. And what this means is pretty much not having a unique mechanism at all, and instead sort of meeting them where they're at and talking about how there's all these different mechanisms out there, and then just relating to them on an through empathy and being really understanding about their situation. But yeah, this is sort of like a little bit complicated, but what you have to understand is that in 2021, for example, SMMA was sort of the prolific new opportunity for us online business nerds. In 2026, however, this became, or SMMA became mainstream to most of us. And so it didn't sound as new. And so this is through time, amount, and quality of buying experiences, right? And so as a result, now it's more sort of like IPGA and growth operating that is hot right now, right? That's sort of like the new, more mainstream, or more prolific, more compelling, if you will, new opportunities that are hot right now. But to a different untapped audience, SMMA could still be really prolific, right? So that's why it's so important to understand who is my target audience and what sounds prolific to them, okay? So what you have to understand about the new opportunities as well is that you are selling the concept, not your product, okay? So for example, with ClickFunnels, they need to sell the concept of funnels first as the new opportunity before they sell their sort of like, before they sell ClickFunnels, pretty much. With keto pills, it's the same thing. They have to sell the prospect on the idea that they need keto as the vehicle to achieve desired outcome and this new opportunity of keto in order to then logically, it would make sense for them to then buy keto pills, right, and introduce that as a solution, right? Same with the SMMA, that you have to sell sort of like, or same with Iman's Agency Navigator program. You have to sell the idea that SMMA is sort of like the best online business in the world, and then from there you can sell sort of like your program, right? Same with the idea of like not selling your productivity tip, but first selling the idea or the new opportunity of clarity before doing so, right? So now, the big domino statement: if I can make people believe that my new opportunity is the key to the result they want and is only attainable through my specific framework, vehicle, system, program, mentorship, whatever it may be, then they have to give me money. Okay, and this is sort of the goal of your copy, of your launch, of your event, is to make them believe by the end of your event this big domino statement that if people believe that your new opportunity is the key to their sort of dream outcome, the result they want, and is only attainable through your program, then they have no choice but to give you money. And so you have to formulate this. If you haven't done so and you're launching an event, you're cooked, because you don't know what you're actually persuading your audience to believe, right? And so here's some examples for you. From ClickFunnels: if I can make people believe that funnels are the key to online business success, which is the dream outcome, funnels is the new opportunity, and are attainable only through ClickFunnels, which is the program, the system, the vehicle, whatever you want to call it, then all other objections and concerns become irrelevant and they have to give me their money. Same with Marshall here. If I can make people believe that Q4, okay, Q4 is the new opportunity in this case. For our event, just for some context, Q4 is sort of like the biggest shopping season of the year. And so as a result, it's the best time for clothing brand owners to start and scale their own clothing brand business. And so if we can make people believe that Q4 is the key to starting and scaling a clothing brand business in 120 days and is only attainable through Urban Unity, which is the program that we were selling at the time, then all other objections and concerns become irrelevant and they have to give me money, okay? Cool. So that's pretty much it. You have to have this dialed. Next pillar we're going to walk through is the chain of belief. So how do you sort of like walk people through this sort of like chain of beliefs in order for them to accept this big domino statement and make them believe that this is true, and as a result make them buy. Okay, that's what we're going to walk through in the next pillar. Let's get into it. Alrighty, so pillar number 3, the chain of beliefs. So think of yourself as a lawyer proving your case to the jury. Your prospect is the jury. Your big domino, which is what we talked about in pillar number 2, is the verdict that you're trying to get the jury to reach. Okay. Here's the thing about juries, though. You can't just walk in and say he's guilty. Trust me. Okay. They won't believe you. In fact, they'll laugh at you. Right. So you need to present evidence. You need to build a case. You need to lead them through a logical sequence until the verdict, aka the big belief or big domino, becomes obvious. And that's exactly what a chain of beliefs does. A belief chain is your sequence of evidence, so 3 to 5 pieces of proof that build your case piece by piece until the jury, aka your prospect, reaches your verdict, which is your big domino. Right, again, your big domino statement. If I can make people believe that my new opportunity is the key to the result they want and is only attainable through my specific program or framework or system, then they have to give me money. Okay? And so to start creating your chain of beliefs, you have to understand the customer awareness level of your prospect, pretty much. So are they unaware of the problem? Are they problem aware? Are they solution aware? Are they product aware? Or are they most aware, aka ready to buy, right? And so your job is going to be to take them through this chain depending on where they're at, right? Because you have to start the chain of beliefs at the sort of awareness level that they're at. So if they're problem aware, you have to take them through and propose and show a solution. From there, you have to show them your product, make them product aware, and from there, you make them most aware, right? And so, again, you have to understand where it is that your prospect is in the awareness level chain, right? So which level are they at? Are they problem aware? Are they solution aware? Are they product aware? And then from there, you have to sort of create your chain of beliefs from that sort of like initial awareness level, and then just take them down to most aware, okay, which is where they're ready to buy. So let's take Iman as an example before we get into Marshall. So Iman's belief chain looks a little something like this. So he's targeting people, and this was back in the day, he was targeting people that needed money. Okay, so that was the problem. So these people were problem aware. They were broke. They needed money. And so what he did was he persuaded them that first, the best way to make money is to start a business. So that sort of was the first belief chain that he had to make them believe. Then he had to make them believe that starting an online business is way better than a physical sort of business, right? So he persuaded them that to make money, you need to start a business, and then from there, you need to the best sort of business. The best way to start a business is online and not through physical. And then from there, he basically persuaded and showed them why starting an SMMA business is the best online business model to start. So from online business to SMMA, so now they're nurtured on the idea that SMMA is the best way to start a business and therefore make money. And from there, it's like the only thing he has to do is persuade them that the best/only way to learn how to start an SMMA is by joining his program, Educate or Agency Navigator, whatever it was, right? So again, linking back to the one big domino, if I can make people believe that starting an SMMA is the key to achieving true financial, location, and time freedom, and it's only attainable through Educate, then all other objections and concerns become irrelevant and they have to give me money. And so that's the chain of beliefs he created in order to make people believe this one big domino at the end, right? Now, if we look at Marsh's belief chain, it's a little bit different because in this case, not only are we targeting a solution-aware audience, because in this case, as you can see, we're starting the belief chain by targeting people who already know that they want to build a profitable clothing brand. But secondly, what's also different about this is because we're selling through an event, it's not sort of like an evergreen belief chain where you have to make them believe X, Y, Z and then your program, right? We're positioning in a way where we need to sell the big idea of the actual event itself, which is completely directly linked to the idea of Q4 and taking advantage of the biggest shopping season of the year. And so what we want to do is we want to meet them where they're at, okay? So they're solution where they know they want to build a profitable clothing brand business, okay? And we're telling them that the best way to build a profitable clothing brand is by tapping into Q4, the biggest shopping season of the year, right? And that's how we sort of sell the registrations to the event. And then from there, it's really about positioning ourselves to take advantage of Q4. We basically tell them that you need Urban Unity systems, guidance, and accountability. Otherwise, you'll miss out on the biggest shopping season of the year because the whole angle of this is like, okay, Q4 only lasts about 120 days, and if you want to build and scale your clothing brand to XYZ in 120 days, you can only do so inside of Urban Unity if you have our systems, guidance, and accountability. And basically, that's how we sell the program. And so we tell them in the Big Domino that starting or scaling a clothing brand in Q4 specifically is the key to building a profitable clothing brand in 120 days, and is only attainable through Urban Unity, right? Um, so the $1 million questions become, what is, again, linking back to market research, what is your target customer's current awareness level? Where should you start your belief chain? Okay, map out the awareness funnel you need them to go down in order to position your solution as the next logical step for them to believe, pretty much. So again, from there, it's like, what chain of beliefs do you need to prove to get them from where they are now to the big belief? Okay, this will vary depending on your audience. That's why it's so important to do so much market research, which I will give you a template to do so at the end of this video if you stick around. Now, moving on to pillar number 5. All right, so pillar number 4, the magic thread, aka the big idea. So, as David Ogilvy once said, unless your campaign has a big idea, it will pass like a ship in the night. Okay, big ideas are usually simple ideas. And so, readers and your prospect in general are always looking for that one big idea, that one thing that's going to make them more successful. And you have to include this in your copy. And it must be strong, it must be easy to understand, it must be easy to believe. And the big idea is sort of like the main reason why people choose you over everyone else, right? And so it's important to lead your campaigns with one powerful big idea that makes sense. Okay, make sure it creates one big emotion, whether that's FOMO, whether that is some sort of specific desire, whether it's fear, whether it's joy, whether it's security, safety, one big emotion. Okay. Support the idea with an engaging story or compelling fact and direct the reader to one action. Okay, so the big idea in general allows you to basically be congruent across your messaging, right? And congruency is so important because it makes people understand what it is you're actually selling, and it makes everything sort of cohesive and easy to digest, which makes it a lot simpler for them to come to a buying conclusion, right? And not be confused by what it is you're trying to sell, what it is you're trying to market them, and therefore comes off less shady and they feel like they trust you more. Okay? So before you write, summarize your message in one sentence. So in the case of Marshall's event, the big idea was that Q4 is the best time to start and scale your clothing brand. That's it. It's strong, it's easy to understand, and it's easy to believe. Okay? It's strong because it's like the best time to start. It's pushing that big emotion, and it's creating that FOMO because they can miss out on this, right? If they don't do anything about it. And it's also very simple to understand, right? And it makes sense when we get into the explanation of it, of like Q4 is like the biggest shopping season of the year, right? And as a result, it's the best time of the year to start or scale or do a drop basically for your clothing brand. And so as a result, all of the copy that we wrote was tailored or linked back to this same big idea that Q4 is the best time to start and scale a clothing brand, even down to like the story sequences, to the promotion, promoting the event, to the actual event itself. And when we actually pitched our program, that tied back to the idea of Q4. Everything was congruent. And so the pitch, just for context, was something along the lines of, if you want our help to actually start and scale your clothing brand business in 120 days so you can take advantage of Q4, because Q4 only lasts about 120 days, about 3 months, well, you can sort of like use our systems and our guidance to help you fast track that. And so everything was linked back to this idea, right? If we walk through the story sequences, right? 48 hours till we're in Q4, the biggest revenue opportunity of the year for clothing brands. Yet most brand owners will miss out on 40% of their revenue, of their yearly revenue, because they have no Q4 strategy. 150K in 30 minutes, 11 out of 13 collections sold out. Q4 has always been our biggest revenue months, right? And for the first and last time, I'm revealing the Q4 blueprint that took me from kicked out to a 7-figure brand. Right, October 1st to 3rd at 2 p.m. PST, I'm exposing my complete Q4 blueprint strategy. Day 1, day 2, day 3, and then claim your spot. Right, same thing here. building a clothing brand is the loneliest thing you'll ever do, blah, blah, blah. We get into the story, and then at the end, we tell them, we announce sort of like the Q4 blueprint, and we tell them that this is a Q4 blueprint challenge and that it's going to be straight value, a straight deep training in order to take advantage of the biggest shopping season of the year, right? How do you take advantage of the biggest shopping season of the year? It ties back to the big idea. Q4 is the best time to start and scale your clothing brand. And it is through this congruency that we were able to do so well because everything was aligned, everything made sense. It was strong, it was easy to understand, it was easy to believe, it created trust and allowed everything to be clear, right? And as a result, people trust that the product that Marshall had the right solution for them, and that on top of that, created the FOMO to actually act now, right? If you can tie your big idea to something that is like time related and like has sort of like a deadline to it, then it's going to make your campaign all the more compelling because it creates that FOMO, that urgency to actually act now rather than later, right? And explains it in a very concrete and specific way. So that's the big idea. Now let's move on to pillar number 5. Alrighty, so pillar number 5, high value writing. So our job as marketers is to increase the perceived value of our program. And the reason why we want to do this is because the higher we increase the perceived value of our program, the lower the sales friction will be. And what I mean by this is like, for example, if you have a prospect showing up on a sales call with the perception that the value of the program is worth, sort of like $10,000, and he's then pitched 4K, he's going to feel like he's getting an absolute bargain, which reduces the sales friction and makes the sale a whole lot easier, right? And so that's why increasing the perceived value of our program is so important before that sales call, right? And that's done through marketing. So how do we actually do that though? Well, we use Alex Hormozi's value equation, which states that value is created by increasing the tangibility of the dream outcome, as well as increasing the perceived likelihood that one specific prospect can actually achieve it themselves and achieve this dream outcome themselves, and also by decreasing the time delay and decreasing any sort of effort and sacrifice that they may have to go through in that process. So questions you can use to filter your copy through this Alex Hormozi value equation is by asking yourself, number 1, how can I increase the dream outcome? So how can I make this more tangible, more specific, more concrete? Okay. Number 2, how can I increase the perceived likelihood of achievement? How do I increase the perceived likelihood that I feel like I can actually do this myself? Okay, that I can actually achieve this. Okay. Number 3, how can I decrease the time delay? And number 4, how do I decrease the effort and sacrifice that I have to go through in order to achieve this dream outcome? Okay. And so here's how we were able to elevate the perceived value of Marsh's program throughout this event. And this mainly came from the challenge event itself, right? Because these 3 presentations, right, throughout these 3 days were each 3 hours long. Okay, and if you can provide someone with this much free value and provide them with value that's actually useful, then people are going to inherently believe, holy shit, if this is how good his free stuff is, imagine how insanely good his paid stuff is, right? And that directly elevates the perceived value of the paid stuff, right? And as a result, people are hopping on these sales calls already pre-sold with high buying intent with lower sales friction. And on top of that, in the actual presentation itself, we provide and communicate the value in such a simple sort of step-by-step roadmap way that it elevates the concreteness and the tangibility of the dream outcome because people feel like they're so close to achieving this dream outcome because it's like step by step. All they have to do is follow these steps, right? And on top of that, what that also does is it increases the perceived likelihood of achievement because if you can show someone exactly what they have to do, then it pushes the easy emotion. It makes them feel like they can do it themselves, right? And as a result, this increases the perceived likelihood of achievement. And on top of that, we included testimonials throughout these presentations of just regular people being able to achieve this desired outcome through or by following this exact path. And that also increases the perceived likelihood of achievement because it makes them think, oh shit, if he can do it, then I can too. On top of that, it's decreasing time delay and effort and sacrifice because what we're doing here in a way is because there's so much different information online, we're in a way summarizing everything for them in one place, which decreases the effort and sacrifice that they have to go through XYZ YouTube video to then watch because now they have full clarity and they know exactly what to do. They know how to execute, right? And so yeah, that pretty much concludes it for elevating the perceived value. Now let's move on to pillar number 6. All right, so pillar number 6, drug words. So this is how you get readers addicted to your copy. Okay, so simple 7-step process. You want to start simple and create a slippery slope. And what slippery slope means is simply creating the desire for them to want to learn more. Number 2 is mountain copy. So mountain copy refers to combining long sentences with short sentences in order to make your copy basically not look like a big chunk of paragraphs that nobody wants to read. So making it look really easy aesthetically to read. Number 3, connectors. So how do you transition smoothly into the next area or the next sort of section of your copy, right? Then number 4, trigger words. So are you using keywords that permeate within your audience and resonate with them to a deep level, right? And so Nick Setting, for example, does a great job at this. If you look at one of his real scripts here, you'll notice he uses a bunch of basically drug words or trigger words or keywords that you whatever you want to call it that resonate within his audience. So look at this 7-step formula: productivity, systems, streamline fulfillment, capitalize, stimulating, marketing, brand awareness, direct acquisition, promotional content, referrals, sophisticated buyers, minimal input, optimizing, all these things, paid in full, right? All of these things resonate with a very specific demographic, and what that does is it disqualifies anyone who wouldn't understand these things, right? And as a result, he's only attracting the people he wants to attract, right? 3rd to 5th grade reading level. So obviously this depends on the ICP that you're targeting, right? But ultimately what this means is just like communicating your points in a simple manner that is not confusing. Okay, the last thing we want is for people to feel confused when we actually write copy and when they're reading or watching our VSL, whatever it may be. Number 6, write like a friend. This is pretty straightforward. It's like just be authentic with the way that you're writing. Just make sure the copy sounds like you and is congruent with the way that you speak in your reels and your videos, whatever it may be, right? Write like a friend, okay? Number 7, concrete visual. Make sure you are specific with the way that you are communicating your points and that you're making the desired outcome, for example, very tangible and clear in their minds, because that increases the value and the desire for them to want to learn more about it, right? Now, if we look at sort of a bad example first, let's analyze this research paper. So this research paper doesn't start simply and doesn't create the incentive or the desire to want to keep reading, because if we start it says something like the introduction of foreign species to Hawaii has greatly affected the populations of the island's native species. It's like this doesn't speak to me at all. This doesn't create the desire for me to want to keep reading. It doesn't show me or tell me how or what I'm going to walk away by reading this. And so as a result, it's not clear, it's not simple, and it doesn't create the desire for me to want to learn more. Number 2, mountain copy. So clearly this doesn't achieve it because it's writing in massive chunks of paragraphs that look really effortful to actually consume and read, which decreases the incentive for me to actually read, because it's just like humans don't like effort in general. So when you use these massive chunks of paragraphs, no one's going to want to keep reading, right? Especially in a world where we just have such short attention spans, right? Number 3, connectors. As you can see here, it's paragraph after paragraph, and there's no connection between these two paragraphs. For example, it's like it just stops paragraph 1 and then paragraph 2 goes, and then it just goes into paragraph 2 with zero context or transition, smooth transition into the next section of the copy, right? Next, 3rd to 5th grade reading level. This obviously doesn't achieve this through using such weird sort of like words that most people don't use on a day-to-day basis. It's like, look at this, grazing, even just the sentence structure, endemic, obviously migrate, like, or these sorts of words, susceptible, don't resonate with how someone would speak on a day-to-day basis, and as a result, you're not writing in a way that's 3rd/5th grade level and is simple to understand for absolutely anyone, right? And as a result, it's also not writing like a friend because it doesn't sound authentic. It sounds like a research paper, right? It sounds like it has sort of like an inauthentic sort of desire or hint behind it, right? In terms of concrete, now looking at concrete visual, this doesn't really accomplish that just because it's literally just stating facts. It's not like telling a story that is concrete, resonating, and visual, right? It's literally just stating facts and using numbers and stuff, right? So that's an example of bad copy, right? copy that is not going to get your readers addicted. Okay, now let's look at a good example. So looking at specifically one of Marshall's emails leading up to the actual promo of the webinar, leading up to the first day of the challenge funnel. Starting with number one, start simple / slippery slope. So if we get into it, we can see here, people keep asking me why I'm sharing my blueprint publicly. Marshall, why are you giving your secrets? Why aren't you creating more competition for yourself? So here, we're actually creating a very relatable, sort of resonating question. It's like, well, yeah, actually, why are you doing this? It's a very simple way to start the email, and it creates the desire to want to learn more. And it opens a loop in the reader's mind, right? Then we look at mountain copy. Does it achieve mountain copy? Well, yes, we're combining the use of long sentences with short sentences. Always look, boom, 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 long, short, always. And what that does again is it incentivizes the reader to want to keep reading instead of seeing massive chunks of paragraphs, and making it look more effortful to actually keep reading. So that's accomplished. Now, connectors, if we look at this specifically, here's the truth, right? If we get into like the sections, we have people keep asking me why I'm sharing my blueprint publicly, blah, blah, blah. Aren't you creating more competition for yourself? Here's the truth, right? That's a transition, smooth. 3 years ago, I was probably where you are. We get into the story, passionate, blah, blah, blah. Nearly gave up, but what kept me going? Boom, next transition, what kept me going was the dream of building something meaningful. Boom, now I'm living that dream. Another transition. That's why I'm doing this. We're explaining, we're transitioning into it, right? Because I remember what it felt like to be hungry for a way out. And I know this blueprint can give you that way out. Boom, we're transitioning into that. In 3 days, transition into the actual blueprint of what they're going to get in 3 days, right? But more important than that, you're going to get a roadmap to freedom. See you October 1st. That's what this is really about, right? So as you can see, we have very smart sort of like connectors that allow the copy to flow smoothly and get our message across promptly and in a way that makes sense and is logical. So now getting into trigger words. Well, if we look at this, what are some trigger words that we're using that permeate within this audience? Well, the idea of passion, right? The idea of creating something profitable, that turning that passion into something profitable, right? Very, very strong keywords. Building something meaningful, right? Because these guys aren't just looking to make a quick bag. They're looking to have fun in the process and build something that's fulfilling, right? And that's why we use the word fulfillment here, right? Working a job, dreading another day at a job that didn't fulfill me, right? The idea of building a dream, right? That's the words, passion and creativity, right? This is the stuff that resonates with these guys. The idea of freedom as well. Freedom to create something you love, freedom to take care of your family, freedom to be excited about your future, right? That's what we're doing here. So we're using these keywords that permeate within that audience and resonate with them on a deeper level. 3rd to 5th grade reading level. Well, we're really just being very simple. We're even just swearing. We're being very conversational with the way that we're speaking, right? So we're writing like a friend. And if we look at 3rd to 5th grade reading level, it's like, well, there's nothing really complex about this. It's very simple. Right? We're not using complex words that people don't understand, and we're talking in a way that's very conversational. So these two are kind of very similar in that sense, right? Now getting into concrete / visual. Well, it's very simple. We're being very visual with the story that Marshall went through, right? Everything that he went through, right? 3 years ago, he's broke, desperate, passionate about clothes, didn't know how to basically build something profitable, and he would, wake up dreading another day at work at a job that didn't fulfill him, and then we're also being very specific about the dream outcome, right? Freedom to create something you love, to take care of your family, to be excited about your future, right? That's what we're doing here. So that is how you essentially make your copy or make your readers addicted to your copy. And a way for you to actually make your copy better is by just filtering it through this cub method here, which basically just says, how do you make your copy less confusing, more believable, so more credible, and less boring, more entertaining, right? How can you use specific keywords that resonate with your audience to make it more entertaining? How do you simplify your copy to get your message across in a logical manner? And how do you make it more believable and add some credibility to build trust, right? And show that you know what you're talking about and that they can trust you. Okay, so that pretty much concludes it for pillar number 6. Now let's move on to pillar number 7. All right, pillar number 7, how to sell anything to anyone. So pretty much what this is, using the analogy of a thermostat here, is how much are you going to elevate the salesiness and of your copy, pretty much. And so what that means is, like, if we take two different examples here, let's take an example of copy that has low and high salesiness. So let's read it. Welcome to the Part-Time YouTuber Academy. We'll help you grow your YouTube channel faster while saving you hours every week. Discover the proven strategies to thrive on YouTube without quitting your day job. Versus a very salesy piece of copy, which is something like, established agency owners and freelancers breaking how the globalist AI agenda could help you make 9,503.84% ROI and quadruple your capacity for new clients without having to hire more employees or work more hours. Blah, blah, blah. You get the point, right? That sounds a lot more salesy than like this, right? And so really what this means is, like, there's different ways of communicating the same point. So if we look at another example here, you'll notice, if we say this is at 17% sales thermostat, we'll say something like how to write new content without getting bored. But if we want to crank the sales thermostat up, we would say something like how an almost inhumanly productive business author and copywriter who has written 100 books and probably 1,000 ads tricks his brain into cranking out new exciting content for up to 12 hours per day without ever getting bored and burnt out, right? These two things are saying the exact same thing. It's just the way that they're being said. And so what's important to understand about this is noting how or what your audience will respond to more. Will they respond more to a very specific sort of salesy type of copy like this? Or will they respond to a more broad, abstract way of copy? Like, are they more logical? If they're more logical, more B2B, then you would use more sort of like, I like to call this more of like a niche setting type of copy where you're being very specific, you're using keywords that permeate within that audience and very, sort of unique in that sense, right? Whereas if you're targeting a more broad audience who's less aware, who's less logical and more emotional, then you would target or you would communicate your points in a way that's a little bit more abstract and more emotional in that sense, right? This is very logical. This uses concrete numbers. Whereas this is a lot more broad and abstract. And when you think of an audience like targeting, middle-aged women, for example, you would use sort of like a more broad type of copy, right? Because, they're more sort of like spiritual and emotional beings, and as a result, it's going to relate and resonate with them more if you're using sort of more broad, emotional, abstract copy. Whereas something like this wouldn't really resonate with them and would resonate better with more logical sort of B2B guys, right? But remember, what you say is more important. So the big idea of your copy is more important than the way that you say it. But just remember, like, this is like very important in terms of understanding how you say it in a way that resonates with your audience and kind of relates back to pillar number 6, which is knowing how to use specific drug words that permeate and resonate with your audience, right? So that is it for pillar number 7. Alrighty, boys, so that pretty much concludes it for the video. That's all the 7 pillars to actually create a compelling marketing message. So if you want, you can DM me on IG for the following free resources. I'll have a link in the description straight to my IG. If you want to get the 7-pillar checklist to run your copy through in your marketing message to make sure it's compelling, as well as all the copy that was written for the Marshall Cruise event that we ran, because obviously I wasn't able to walk you through every single piece of copy because there was a lot. So if you want every single script from every single email that was written, the post, pre, application VSL, as well as the actual challenge funnel webinar scripts, then DM me for that. And also, if you like, I have Iman Ghadzhi's previous monetized challenge funnel copy that you can reach out for, and I'll send it to you. All right. Hope you found this valuable. Check the link in the description to follow me on IG and DM me for these resources, and we'll talk soon. Peace.